My name's Tracy Lund. I'm the manager of the Morwell Neighbourhood House and also a Kinder Cup Cafe. And I'm currently a sitting Morwell councillor. I'm currently holding the role of Deputy Mayor. Morwell's located a little bit over 2 hours from Melbourne. Morwell's best known for powering the state of Victoria, and that has primarily been done through the coal industry over decades. February 2014, it was hot, windy, gusty conditions, and we were experiencing some of the hottest days that we'd seen in Latrobe and Victoria. My husband works for the CFA. I had decided that I would take my young children to the beach. And he doesn't very often tell me not to go somewhere, but on that particular day he'd asked me not to go. He felt the weather conditions were going to be too unpredictable. It was quite windy and it was quite hot. My emergency app started to ping. I was starting to sort of look more closely at what was happening and watch it on social media. In the very, very early stages of this event, it was declared a bushfire before it was changed to a hazmat. Now we know that the fire was in the mine almost immediately from that day, and there was a significant delay in addressing that in terms of the messaging, so the community could understand actually what was happening. Within the first day, we were making phone calls to check on people, and immediately people were saying to us, "This is different, the smoke's different, it's burning my eyes, my head hurts," and they were reporting immediate health impacts. I just started really watching the socials. People were messaging that they were trapped or they couldn't get out, and they were feeling very, very overwhelmed, and they were quite frightened. That very next day we came down. The house was actually closed to the public, and we just used that time to ring and do welfare checks on people basically. And we started hearing straight away that people were reporting health issues. It was very much like, resident on BT Crescent reporting headache, resident on Elgin Street reporting stinging eyes. So when we collected all the data, we were really keen to get it to, I guess, the powers that be at the time, people that could do something with it. And we were trying to escalate what we were seeing and hearing on the ground. At every point that we tried to escalate this, the information that we had, we got lovely emails and responses. "Oh, thank you, we don't need that at this time." I think a few things did come out of the mine fire. We've seen changes in how government agencies respond to emergency events and also the messaging. We now have smoke protocols, so they are triggers to remove communities that are close by to smoke events. Changes we've seen have been driven by everyday community people that were impacted, that found their voice in the most difficult of circumstances to escalate these concerns at the highest level of government. And we would not see changes that we have today if it was not for the many, many community members that raised their hands, raised their voices, and against all adversities that could be thrown at them, continued to drive the issue that we were experiencing a health disaster, that it needed response and that things had to change. We have still got a very, very long way to go. We've got mines to rehabilitate. We're still in a position where, no community is immune to disasters, and the broader seat of Morwell is particularly vulnerable to disasters in the future. I think the path has been forged and we know where we need to go, but there's still a lot of work to do. We're not quite there yet.
My name's Angela Chittum, and back in 2014 during the Hazelwood mine fire I lived in Morwell, and I still currently reside there. One thing that really struck me and affected me and the family was that smell was so strong it actually was affecting our throats. It seemed to cause the asthma to be a lot worse in the children that do get asthma, and I just felt like my throat was sort of burning, and either from the smoke or combined with the toxins, I guess. So that was a bit scary too, to not know what effect that was going to have on our health. We tried to put off having to go outside, of course, and trying to keep the children, just protected from the smells and what we were obviously being told was in the air. Being told to keep our windows closed and don't use your air conditioners and things like that. That was tough too. So we kept an eye on what was happening with the fire through Facebook, through other social media channels. We tried to get as much information as possible to just make sure that we're keeping each other safe. When we did go outside, visually we could see just a lot of smoke. The colour of it was so grey, and it was a really looming feeling to look over there and see that and just know what was happening. So at the time of the mine fire, there was 4 children at least in the house. So to keep the kids cool, we actually would blow up a little inflatable pool and have it on the tiled area in the house, so that it didn't matter if they got water everywhere, sort of thing. But yeah, that was one way we did try to keep them cool. And we could not hang anything outside, because I actually had washing outside at the time, and all the ash that was coming down, it was just, you had to rewash again. It was impossible to hang anything out to get it dry. After the Hazelwood mine fire, I was actually contracted to go out and do a survey with community. I felt it was really important, and I really wanted to be a part of that. So yeah, I took on that role of going out to survey the Aboriginal community, and they were very concerned about their health issues, especially the elders. We all saw it as an ecological disaster that shouldn't have happened, and we're worried about the effects that was going to have for now and into the future. So a lot of the Aboriginal community from the surveys that I did would really like to see the mine site rehabilitated, and in a way that the whole community can share. Is that it'd be great if there was like some cultural space there where we could have a permanent smoking ceremony spot for community gatherings, you know, not just Aboriginal community, for everybody to use. I mean, it's a big site, we could do a lot with it, but also to make sure that there's bushland is planted and that we can rehabilitate the land, not just the site. It's a big sore in the earth that needs to be healed, and if we can help support that and heal our mother country, I think that's going to give some healing to a lot of people as well, to know that we've done something good for the land rather than just cut her open. It's important to bring community together as well, like that sense of that we've gone through it together, and I'm sure generations ago they've had similar things, you know, that's brought them together. Well, this is in our generation now. It'd be great to bring and to know that our younger generations are going to have something that's hopefully beautiful that's come out of something that was so horrible.
My name's Ron Ibsen, Vice President of Voices of the Valley. Basically, we set about founding the Health Innovation Zone. Right, I'm a third generation SEC worker, born in the open cut. When I first found out about the fire, it wasn't in the cut, it was up at Hearns Oak, and my uncle lived up there, and we went up there and helped evacuate the houses up there. From there, you could see it catch the APM, and things blew up over at the APM, and then it got into the cut, and things started blowing up in the cut. The first inkling that people were sick came off social media, off Facebook. Some of my young friends who had young children, and she reported that her husband was sick and that she was getting the same symptoms and her children were sick. I also noted that people were saying about their animals getting sick, and I thought this is a bit weird. So started to do some data, do some research, find out who was sick and where they were. Okay, government, can we get a health audit please? Health department please? Can you have a look and see what's wrong? And the government gave replies through the media and said things like only 3 extra people have reported into hospital because of the mine fire. The rally had been sort of advertised, but everybody was lethargic because nobody wanted to go outside, right? But everybody was pissed at the government, and everybody's sick, right? So it's affecting them personally. right? And the government's not listening. And I think that was probably the most galvanising point of it. Whenever anything goes wrong, the government will hold an inquiry to find somebody to blame. It was a very shallow focus, and it was basically what went wrong. They were asking that question, right? And the first inquiry, nothing about health, nothing about the health deficit, nothing about does coal affect, is coal a good thing, whatever, not about anything, just about how each government department handled itself during that emergency. Liberal government's not game to say industry's fault. This is the largest industrial spill in Australia's history, right, with the most people affected in Australia's history. The Latrobe Valley has a health deficit. We couldn't get help for the sick without proving that people were dead. We could not get assistance for morbidity without proving mortality. So that's what we had to do. Now, the second inquiry had a much, much broader scope. And so the recommendations that came out of the second inquiry were very much coloured by what had been missed in the last one. It was really cool to be able to sit down and have a look and have a think about what we as a community could push for. Coal lost its social licence here when the French government fucked up Hazelwood. After the inquiry, we sat down with all these people, and in that kind of thing. We started to work together, and when the community started to work together, that's when the concept for a health zone was put together, that you could have an assembly that worked from the ground up. Literally, how would you do that ground up? And so we worked with politicians and everybody to get it up and running. Well, I'm not trying to do cultural shaping anymore. I'm not pissing against the wind anymore. I've given it my best. Right, we've created all sorts of things. We've created health zones. We've created an economic zone, a special economic zone, where the taxes are different here now. When a health zone, we want to look at the health of the people, and we want the people to have a say in their own health. And we want a special economic zone, right, because we're going to change from coal. We're going to have to change. We're going to have to transition. We need new industry here. We need breaks for these new industry. We need tax breaks for our people. And all that money dissolved into bureaucracy and God knows what.
It sure did.
Football, I believe. Football, I believe. And other such bread and circuses.
So my name's Ellen Jane Brown. I am a Gippslander, have been for 35 years, and I live in Allenby South. Currently I work with the Latrobe Health Assembly as its Executive Officer. I've been in that role for 3.5 years. In 2014 I was working with the Department of Health, and I first became aware of the fires through the local news and the occasional smoke billowing across the Sabrinskas when the wind turned around. One of the things about working in the city is that I commuted daily from Trafalgar Station to the city, and it was always quite confronting to hop off the train each evening because when you hopped off the train, that smell of smoke from the fires was overwhelming. I came to the Valley in 2017 and I came as the Principal Advisor to set up the Health Innovation Zone. That was a direct outcome of the second element of the Hazelwood mine fire inquiry. The inquiry initially just looked at the root cause of the fire, but it was realised that the health aspects of it hadn't been considered. And so when the inquiry reopened, they explored the consequences and the impact of the fire on the health of our community. But in unpacking that, they realised that there was more to it, and that successive governments had kind of ignored the Latrobe Valley in terms of health and wellbeing outcomes. In setting up the Health Innovation Zone and the Assembly, there was a recognition that the low socioeconomic status within the Valley were insurmountable. They just hadn't shifted for many, many years. And so we needed to reimagine how we might intervene in the health system. One of the recommendations of the inquiry was to set up a health assembly to allow voice for community, to say, you as a community need to have the right and the ability to interfere in the health system and have your say. And we should be able to learn from your experiences and your knowledge as a community member. As part of the commitment to the Latrobe Valley community, there was a long-term health study that's planned to go for 20 years. And it came about because we needed to understand better the impact of the smoke and the fires on chronic conditions. As a Latrobe Health Assembly, I think we have a responsibility to acknowledge that good health is not about bricks and mortar and more doctors and more nurses. It's also about those things that impact on all of us: clean house, good housing, clean water, access to transport, employment, and with a community that's in transition, it therefore begs the question: how do we measure that? How do we ensure that what we are doing is environmental sound as our community transitions from a mining and power generating economy to something different, whether it be wind or solar or new energies or new types of work even? How do we as a health assembly ensure that people are aware of the other bits, incidentals if you like? And so the best way to do that is to use existing measures and say that the environment is important and that everything we do impacts on it. The more we can do to minimise the harm, the better our community will be, and the better our community is, the better their health and wellbeing outcomes. The exciting thing about having a health assembly is that it does provide an alternative to mainstream. If we think about health delivery, it's normally we are the experts, we know what is best for you. And what the inquiry said is that to government is that you need to listen to community, by listening to those with lived experience, by listening to community members who are working in that space, by engaging more broadly and saying to them, well, it hasn't been working, how might we work together to change outcomes for the better, but to reflect your individual learnings as a community member. And so the Health Assembly is unique, it's the only one of its kind in Australia, and it's a place where eventually community members can have greater control in shaping how health services are delivered within the Latrobe Valley.
Hi, I'm Jen Lim and I live in the Latrobe Valley. In 2017, I worked at Berry Street, and that was when the Hazelwood mine was closed. We had people involved in the door knock campaign just to see how community were feeling about the closure. That sort of happened over a month's period. During the door knocking, people were sharing that they were isolated, there were health concerns and they weren't connected to organisations. Yeah, hearing that people weren't engaged and involved in community and services was really disheartening, because there's a lot of work that goes into supporting people within the community. So that was one of the reasons why there were different events and opportunities that came out of these inquiries, is to connect the community more and engage them in different events and accessing them where they are. After I had left the university, I worked for Council and Berry Street and Gippsport and now Community College Gippsland. And so through that journey, I had also been involved in the Gippsland Community Leadership Program and then also completed my MBA just this last year. That's given me a platform to connect with people and understand what there is out there. So I do see myself as a network weaver, and so from there I've been involved in lots of different community events and community programs and organisations, and that leads to a community group called Latrobe Women Creating Conversations. Latrobe Women Creating Conversations was formed in 2017. And I was working at Berry Street at the time, and my manager, Jane Barr, along with Lisa Price and Val Prokopev, we had a group of women come together from all different industries and organisations, and we wanted a platform for women to come together to connect. And it was sort of established as an advocacy group to start with. From that group, we delivered a whole lot of different events. One of the initiatives that we established that's still rolling now is called Latrobe Women Creating Conversations Dinner or Lunches. And that's a group of women that come together on a monthly basis and just connect and collaborate, and they go out into their various communities to share what's going on and to stay connected. When incidents occur or tragedies occur, I tend to support those that are around me connect, and so it's more about the wake of the tragedy. So how do we create resilience in community, and how do we bring people together to, continue living life with hope and with connection. And so the Latrobe Women Creating Conversations group, for instance, has been a group of hope and connection. We've been able to bring people along to share their stories as well, and look forward into the future and see what we can do together as a community. I know so many people in this community just like me who want to be that social fabric. They want to bring people together, they want to connect and run different events for community to get together. So I do have a lot of hope. I do have a lot of experience with community coming together and developing initiatives and programs off their own back. Say, for example, Latrobe Women Creating Conversations, it was just an idea, people got behind it, and were able to then encourage community members to get together and socialise.
Hi, I'm Harley. I grew up in Traralgon and I live in Morwell now. Right now I do a lot of work around youth advocacy with the Latrobe Youth Space, and I work a lot in youth suicide prevention. So I actually found out about the mine fires when I was 11, and I found out about them because my nana couldn't come down to see us because the highway was on fire, which was quite terrifying. I think growing up around all the industrial complexes and the infrastructure definitely shifts the way that you really interact with the world around you. You kind of get used to this gritty working man feel, and I think you notice earlier on the sort of impact that factories have on the nature literally around them. It's quite hard to grow up to be a compassionate young person when you and everyone around you have only ever spent their lives trying to survive. If you're poor enough or disadvantaged enough, no matter how much you want to help people, it's not going to get you food for dinner, it's not going to secure you a job, and it becomes incredibly hard. The kids I grew up with had already lost a lot in the Black Saturday fires, and the mine fires were, I think, just more fires. It became somewhat normal to live in a fire disaster. Definitely as a kid, there was a feeling of betrayal. Despite all the bushfires that we all grew up with and Black Saturday, that was nature. This was, people were in charge of this thing that was on fire. There was people whose literal entire jobs was to make sure that everything didn't burn down and everything started burning down. In primary school, I kind of made that connection. Humans' responsibility when it came to climate change and disasters like this. Looking towards the future, a really important thing to remember is that the young people here will not be able to utilize new education, traineeships, any of those economic boons. They won't be able to access any of them if they do not already have their basic needs met. Policy changes and economic changes need to truly work to help those that they are created for, which it should be created for the people who live in the places that you're changing things around. Young people here have grown up in almost a constant state of emergency, whether it's Black Saturday or the mine fires or just the everyday struggle to survive or COVID. The young people here haven't gotten to develop like normal kids. They never have. They didn't when they were in primary school, they didn't when they were in high school, and they certainly didn't when they were locked inside in COVID. Everything around the people here has always been a state of emergency, and it's really important to acknowledge that. We can create a wellness space for the next generations that doesn't feel like a comedy riff on capitalism, which it currently feels like. We can, slowly but surely, the earth won't look like there's giant craters in it. I'm incredibly hopeful for the future. I know we can make things right, and I know we can inform our practices on the people who they will most affect. I know we can do it, and I trust that we will do it, because we must. We want what's best for ourselves and our children and the generations next. I do believe we can make a better life than what we have now.